Hello, everyone. It's me, Andrew. I'm here at Star Cottage Studio, which is our biggest project at Allegory Gallery. It's my working studio and our fulfillment department for the shop. So, yeah, we're pretty excited about it. So today we are going to do a little tutorial on how to wire wrap briolettes, which are teardrop-shaped components. So hopefully you all are having a good start to your week. If you're watching, say hello. Maybe tell us where you're tuning in from. We always like to hear a little bit about y'all. It's not all about me. It's about you as well. So hopefully, you are having a good start to your week. It's Tuesday. Yesterday, William was on and he was showcasing some of the sterling silver, silver plated, and bronze charms and components, some of the ones that we have here at Allegory Gallery. You can see that, all of the ones that we showed yesterday in yesterday's live if you missed it. And you can always go to our website, that's allegorygallery.com, and you can check out the whole selection of what we have to offer. Yeah, so it's pretty fun. All right, let's see who's watching. Hey, Susan. Susan's tuning in from St. Louis. Patty is watching from Chili Gray, Washington, Washington State, or Washington, PA, or Washington, DC. So many Washingtons. Today it's pretty beautiful out. It's in the 70s and it's pretty sunny and nice. We had some crazy thunderstorms last night around midnight, and it was a little bit wild. Of course, it scared Gilbert. Gilbert is our little sweet, sensitive heart boy, and he does not like it when there's weather. So he was chilling with me, and then the thunder started happening, and he ran upstairs to go under the bed. But it cleared up, and it's a beautiful day here in Ligonier, Pennsylvania. And if you don't know where Ligonier is, we are nestled in the Laurel Highlands, which is in southwestern Pennsylvania. We are about an hour and a little bit east of Pittsburgh, and not too far from Johnstown, if you know where that is. So, yeah, we've been in business for almost 12 years now. It's pretty wild to think about that. But we're super excited to be able to continue to offer what we do and have our little brick and mortar on West Main Street in lovely Ligonier, Pennsylvania. Marianne is watching. Hey, Marianne. Deborah is watching from Fort Lauderdale. Deborah will be in Ligonier in August and will stop in. Well, if you do, Deborah, be sure to let us know when you're coming, because we'll try to be in the shop. I'm hardly ever in the shop nowadays. I'm usually here at the cottage making stuff, and I keep weird hours. So somebody drove by the cottage and was like, I tried to stop in when you were there, but you weren't there. And I was like, unless you're there from the hours of midnight to 7 a.m., then you probably won't see me. So be sure to let us know when you're going to be through, and we'll try to make sure to be here to say hello. We've also got some things planned for this summer. So if you let us know, we can kind of triangulate, when you'll be here and what's going on. Fridays, we generally have our teacher Jen in, and she does make and take. So folks can come in, sit down, make some stuff. It's a really fun and relaxed time. We're also planning on rebooting some of our clubs and social things that we do locally. For instance, the Inspired by Reading book club. it's been kind of was on hiatus for COVID. Um, and we at first we tried to do Zoom, but I think we jumped the gun a little bit, and people were not really. They're like, I don't really know about this Zoom thing. And now at this time we're all, old pros, as they say. Um, Now, I do have a meeting directly following this. So somebody keep time for me because I can't actually see my time here. So I'll need a timekeeper volunteer. So when it's 5:55, go emergency, emergency, and let me know so that I can discontinue talking so that I don't miss my next meeting because we're planning the GBE and I don't want to miss that meeting because we've got a lot going on. And there's a lot of fun things that we're planning. So, yeah, I don't want to miss that. And especially since I'm hosting, so on the Zoom. So I don't want to not be there to let people in. All right. Norma's watching. Howdy, Norma. Diane's watching. Hello, Diane. Thanks for tuning in. Norma says, so happy you're doing the briolette wrapping. Yeah, so somebody asked yesterday, I don't remember if it was you or somebody else, but somebody asked if we could do a tutorial on how to wire wrap briolettes. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that I am not an expert wire wrapper. I wire wrap because I need to and it's functional, but there are people who take wire wrapping to the next level, and I'm not that. I'm not one of those people. So if you are like, oh, I want something more advanced, go watch their videos because this is going to be kind of very basic, very easy, and hopefully, if you're having trouble, it will help you kind of figure things out. But I should also mention that I wire wrap a lot differently than a lot of people. So sometimes people will see what I do and it will click for them. And then for other people, it will not. So I train myself how to wire wrap. And me and Cynthia kind of learned together about how to wire wrap. So we wire wrap a little bit differently than a lot of other people. So just so you know. All right. And then don't come back and say, well, Andrew said wire wrap like this because y'all gonna start fights. And then I don't want to have to throw down with anybody. And they're gonna be like, well, who's the expert now? That sometimes happens. And if we can avert that, then that will be super awesome. Linda is tuning in from Tucson, Arizona. Howdy, Linda. Patty is in Washington State. I was just talking about when I was teaching out in Washington State. I was in Port Townsend and was teaching at Art Fest several years ago now, and that's when I found a human jawbone, which was startling. But yeah, so anyways, Julie's watching. Howdy, Julie. Norma's tuning in from central Kentucky, and it is 96-degree heat wave there. So she's trying to stay cool. Stay cool, Norma. Stay cool. It's been pretty beautiful here today, so I can't complain. Cindy's watching. Debbie's watching from Florida. Cindy is also from Florida, if you didn't know that. She's from near where I grew up. So that's pretty cool. Marianne says, cold, windy, and rainy today. Altogether, a so-so day. Yeah, I need the sunshine. It doesn't necessarily need to be warm. I've come to learn, but if it's cold and gray, like my energy levels just drop. It's just like, Barbara's tuning in from San Francisco. Howdy, Barbara. Cindy's watching from sunny Chandler, Arizona. Howdy, Cindy. Terry says, liked and shared here and on Facebook. Thank you, Terry. Teresa's joining in. Hey, Teresa. Susan says, basic works for me. And Molly says, me too. Suzanne's tuning in. Hello, Suzanne. Marianne says, Port Townsend, such a nice place. It is. It's a really nice place. We were at I can't remember the name of it, but it's where they filmed An Officer and a Gentleman, maybe. And so they had this event called Art Fest, and it was Tisha and Tracy Moore, and they put it on, and it was a really lovely community of mixed media artists. So the teachers would stay in the officers' housing, and then the students would stay in the barracks. And we stayed with Junker Jane and her husband, which that's not her real name, but yeah, they were super fun. And Cynthia and Sheila had been out previously a couple times before, but that had been my first and unfortunately the last time because they stopped doing it, but it was a lot of fun. Weird, but fun. So, finding human remains on the beach is a little bit disconcerting, but it was all right. It worked out. Cindy is tuning in from California. Hey, Cindy. Leslie is tuning in from Winter Garden, Florida. A lot of Florida people today. Central Florida too. Sharon says hello, enjoying watching from Buffalo, New York, where it's separating S crystals. You know the ones. We're not supposed to talk about it. We don't want to get our video flagged and removed. So Cindy is in Longwood outside of Orlando near Winter Park. Yeah. All right. Leslie's tuning in. It feels like it's 95, but feels like 101 with the humidity. That's a lot. Too hot for me. You grew up in Florida, but I've been ruined. My blood is too thick now. We went down to visit my parents. I'm going to say not too long ago, but it was actually pretty much a while ago. And it was in December, and they had the heat on, and it was in the 70s, and I thought I was going to pass out. And then I didn't want to open the windows because then they're like, hey, Andrew, you're wasting electricity. So I didn't want to do that. So there was a lot of fanning going on and super shiny pictures of me sweating to death. Marianne says, I would have finished my necklace and taken a pic, but Miss Cindy says 80s here, east of San Francisco. That's nice. Is that like Oakland? Susan says it's 98 here. See, y'all don't even have to watch the Weather Channel anymore. Just tune into our lives. You'll get the coast to coast weather live at 5. Well, 5:15-ish. Susan says, I keep wishing for a blizzard. Skip that nonsense. We don't need no extra. Well, maybe for you if you like that, but no, thank you. I just like it to be all kind of moderate and temperate all the time, and that'd be super great for me. Dora's tuning in from Colorado. Hey, Dora. Carol's tuning in from Reno. All right. So I'm caught up. Let's do this thing. Otherwise, I'm definitely 100% going to be late to my next meeting, and we don't want to do that. And then you're going to be like, I thought he said he's going to show us how to wire app. And then I'll be like, well, we were talking about weather, so sorry, y'all. Yeah, so I can't think of anything that I need to bring up. Usually William's like, make sure to mention this, but we didn't have a pre-live talk. So I'm just going to say go buy stuff on the website so that we can pay bills. Does that work? He's probably like, that was super terrible. But well. Anyways, Cindy said a little bit further east in Walnut Creek. Yeah, I like Walnut Creek. There used to be this really cute little metaphysical shop. And I would go there and buy crystals and oracle decks and things like that. So super cute. And then I think I saw a deer in the middle of the street there. So yeah, I think Molly's over in that area over in California. I miss doing the shows in California. It was a lot of fun. Though I don't miss the fire season because we would do the shows and then, people are like, oh, I can't breathe. The mask, they constrict my lung flow. It's like, well, what? The mask also, when it's fire season, keeps you from having black boogers. So, yeah. It helps you breathe as opposed to hinder it. All right. So let me flip this around before I make too many people turn off the TV. We'll see if I can do this elegantly, which is probably not the case. So StreamYard has this thing where they put they switch the front to back camera in the weirdest place, and it takes a minute to get there. Today's project, we're going to need something to cut the wire. So I've got my handy dandy cutters. We're going to need some chain nose pliers and some round nose pliers. Now, depending on the type of pliers you use, if you use round nose pliers, it will determine how big your loops are. If you use pliers that are larger, like this, depending on where you make your loop, if you make your loop closer to the tip, your loops will be smaller. And if you make your loops closer to the base, they'll be larger. So depending on the project that you're working on and what you need, it will determine what kind of tools you use. So keep that in mind. So one of the first things that I'm going to mention is that, so one of the first things I'm going to mention is that the first thing that you're going to need to think about is the wire that you use. Now, a lot of the problems that people have right off the bat is that they try to use the wrong type of wire for wire wrapping. A lot of times people will try to use hardened wire. So there's a process called work hardening, and that basically means manipulating the metal until it gets more rigid. So if you look at this on like a atomic level or whatever, microscopic, probably atomic level, metal is made up of little tiny crystals, and those little crystals, when they're in a annealed state, which is softened by heat, they're all kind of hanging out and loosey-goosey. But the more you do stuff to it, it compacts the crystals. So the more you manipulate the wire, the more those crystals get tighter and tighter, and they get hardened. Now, sometimes people are like, oh no, that's a terrible thing. But the thing is sometimes that's a good thing. However, you can take it too far, kind of like anything. You can, it's kind of like ice cream. You can have too much and then, you're bent over puking up your guts. So don't do too much because then guess what happens? It snaps. The crystals get so rigid that eventually it becomes brittle and it breaks. Kind of like a soda pop tab or soda tab, pop tab, depending on where you are, you know what I mean. You go back and forth, eventually it just snaps. So the first thing is to choose a wire that is dead soft. Sometimes people like to use half hard. I prefer using dead soft, and if I need to harden the metal, I can just run it through some nylon pliers and that will work harden it. But it's harder to go from hard or half hard to dead soft because you have to anneal the wire. Um, so that, just keep that in mind. Today I'm going to be using the Softlex craft wire. It is a non-tarnished silver plated wire. It's nice because it's super soft. The core is, I don't actually know what the core is, um, but the core is different. And so as a craft wire, it's a base metal, and it's makes it a lot more malleable. So that way, whenever you're doing these little tips and tricks with swirls and turning things around and wrapping, it stays nice and soft. So pick the wire that's going to work for your project the best. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can wire wrap your briolettes, and really it depends on how you want that look. It just depends on how you want it to look. I like a nice, healthy, messy wrap. And when I say a messy wrap, it takes up a lot more wire, but it has a little bit more, I think it's like almost like you're adding a bead cap, and it has kind of a more organic and kind of rustic feel to it. So I prefer to wire up like that. Other people like more precision kind of machine wrap, and that's fine. But I don't know. I used to do that, and I kind of like more messy wraps. So that's where my brain is. And also, if you mess up, then it looks more intentional. Like if you have everything like super perfect and super even, then it can look less than good if you mess up. So keep that in mind when you're deciding what you are trying to do. Now, wire wrapping is one way to work with briolettes, but there are lots of ways that you can add a bail or a place to hang your briolettes. So there are things called pinch bails. There are glue and place things. There's lots of different options as far as how you can string up briolettes and use them in your designs. So just keep that in mind, because sometimes people are like, oh no, briolettes, and then they get scared. Now, also, the other thing to consider is the material that you're working with. Today, I'm going to be using these blue coral briolettes. I decided to pick briolettes that were slightly bigger so that you could actually see what I'm talking about in these demos, as opposed to not being able to see. Depending on what you pick for your briolettes will determine what kind of wire you'll need. So today I'm using 22 gauge wire. But guess what? If you have a tiny, tiny crystal, and it is of the fragile variety and has a hole that was drilled in India, you may not, and probably in all likelihood, will not be able to fit 22 gauge wire into your briolette. So keep that in mind. Your briolette will help dictate what kind of wire you use. So keep that in mind, as well as everything else I've just said. Okay? Not too hard. And actually it isn't that hard. Once you know what you're doing, then it becomes second nature. It's just all about kind of, knowing your materials. All right. So here we go. I'm going to take a couple of these off, and I'm going to show two different styles of wire wrapping. I'm going to lower this down so you can actually see what we're doing, but not too low, because then if it's too low, the phone will get in the way and then I won't be able to properly show you what's going on. So let's take that away. Oh, that one's actually small. Oh, yeah, that one. This is smaller. All right. So I've got my briolettes. Let me raise this up a smidgen. And I'm going to measure off probably 8 inches or so. And I'm going to cut this. Now I've got my dead soft craft wire, and I'm going to string my briolette on it and find the center. All right. Roughly the center. We're going to precisely eyeball this, as they say. And by they, I mean me. All right. And then so I'm going to bend up these wires so that they form, and I like to cross over like this so that they are making a little hat like so. All right. So you just bend those wires. So far, I can just manipulate this wire with my fingers because the wire is dead soft and a craft wire. Also, I like to use my pliers when I'm manipulating my wire because these tips can get sharp. And then you're like, how come, you go cut the lime for the margarita. And then you're like, ooh, burn. It hurts. That salt in the wound burns. Yes, so don't do that. So, but since this is so far from the ends and tips of the wire, I don't really have to worry about that. All right. So I've bent this over. This is over top of this one, and I'm going to um, uh, cinch that so that this is going straight up. All right. And then this is going to come over like so. And then, so this should be poking up kind of from the center of your briolette. This is going to form the loop later on. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to just start wrapping this around and coiling it. And because this is a sturdier stone, I can use the stone to turn and manipulate my wire. If this was a crystal, I would hold the wire with the pliers and wrap holding that so that there aren't any stress fractures here, because that can get super, super delicate, fragile style and chip right off. Now, if you chip your briolette and you're like, oh no, it's the end of the world as we know it, you can still save your briolette. I did a tutorial on using epoxy putty or epoxy clay to make little bead caps. And that's a wonderful way that you can disguise any chipped briolettes. Now, as we get closer to the tip, I'm going to switch to my pliers. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to kind of curve that inwards so that when it nestles in, it's going to nestle in nice and tight and not be, it's going to go in there nice and tight and hug it in. All right. And if it's not 100% perfect at this point, that's okay. But you can just kind of tap this down so that it hugs in. And if not, hey, guess what? You can trim it. And when I'm trimming it, I'm going to trim that away from my eyeball hole so it doesn't go in my eye and then make the tears of blood. All right. So I'm going to straighten this out a little bit. Now this is where you have to make your loop. And your loop it's up to you how you make this loop. But I'm going to show you how I do it. Because there are some people and they're like, now do the cigarette roll. And I was like, I don't smoke. And so I don't know that terminology. So if you need that terminology, go watch their videos. It's perfectly fine by me. So I find I'll go up about 1/2 inch and then I'll bend the wire over. Now, if you are too far away from the top, you can always walk your loop down. What I mean by that is just go like this and cinch it so that your loop sits on top of your little cluster of bun at the bottom there. All right. And I manipulated that so it's coming out at a 90-degree angle, like so. So there's a loop. Now, one thing about this technique is you, especially with the softer wire, if you use this to hold it and you're using this as a mandrel, if you squeeze real tight, there will be a notch in the top of your loop. And then guess what? That is going to leave a mark and it will create a weak spot. So be gentle but firm. Gentle but firm. All right. I like to keep this in place when I do the first wire wrap or so. And that's so that you're so that the uh so that it keeps the shape of the loop. Now, if you're going to make a lot of loops and you need them all to be the same size, you can get an Adenti pen or a Sharpie and make a little knot, a little mark there. See, like I've done? And that will be your guide so that every time those are all the same size. Because sometimes if you get like in the flow and you're like, in the zone and you're like just making and you're not even thinking, if you make your loops that close to the tip, the loops will be smaller. If you make your loops close to the bottom, they'll be bigger. And so they'll be all different sizes. And then you're going to be like, oh, I zoomed in on that picture and it looks like the dog's dinner, as they say. So don't do that. So you can just mark it and keep that there and like so. Now, then here's the thing. Here's you're going to do the swirl. So I am holding this firm and moving this wire around my briolette. So this is the swirl. And then I'm going to nestle this in right underneath where I left off on my first part. All right. And then I'm going to continue to wrap around. And it's going to make a little pointy hat, you know? And once I get to the end, I'm going to get my pliers out and use my pliers, use my tools, and do that. And then I'm just going to squeeze this in, tucking in my wires. And then I'm going to straighten up my loops or my loop. And if this is a weird kind of teardrop shape, I don't know if you can see that, you can always take this and go down and round it out by going like this. And that'll round out your loop. Because this is a mandrel, and you're using that round nose pliers to form your loop. All right, so there you go. There's the first style. Whoop. And then if you wanted to just put an ear wire on this, then you're done. Make some earrings. Well, I guess you made one earring. Now, if you wanted to add more wire to make this even looser, all you do is you just start with more wire at the start. So you could start with maybe 12 inches of wire, and then you can do kind of a looser and less tight. The thing about keeping this tight, at least at the first part, is that it will make it so that your briolette doesn't bend back and forth so that it's kind of like on a swing set. All right, so there's that one. All right, now the other option for this is you will use a shorter piece of wire, and this is about 4 inches or so, and you'll put this in the center. And if you need to do this, so this isn't a curve, the wire has a memory, so it's going to want to curve because it was curved around the spool. You just straighten that out just a wee bit, and that will help guide it through the hole. All right. And then so you just do the same thing, basically what we started with. You cross your wires over like so. You cinch that like this so that it makes a nice little perpendicular hanging up at the top like that. It will create a 90-degree right here. This kind of 90. I don't know what that is. That's called like 83 degree. And then you just wrap once around, or just enough so that you secure that loop at the top. And you're going to stay mostly at the top there, and then trim it. And then you can tuck your wire in like so. And that's an easy little thing you can do. And then you just add your loop. All right, and then you can wrap it. All right, and then trim it so that you are not having a lot of excess wire. Now, this one will kind of move around a little bit. It kind of is what it is. You know, if you wrap it tighter, you can potentially stop that from happening. However, if you wrap it too tight, you can chip your briolette. But otherwise, it's kind of hanging out just as like a hat, and it's not covering the stone. So if you have a stone that you don't want to cover, in this style, you can do it like this. Now, depending on how much wire you use, you can even make this smaller and more machined. Now, another trick is if you got some, this is a crimping pliers, you can go in and use the notch closest to the tip and use that to tighten up your coil, like so. All right. Teresa asked, what brand of flush cutters are you using? These are the Lindstrom RX kind, and I love these. These are really great. They have a nice sturdy tip. The metal is really sturdy, and I can cut all kinds of wire. And the flush cutters are super flush. If you need it to be even more flush, and I should also mention that when you cut this, it will be flush on this side, but it will add a bevel on this side. So I've seen people where if they don't like the bevel, like this side, I'll just show you real quick. Like in this piece of wire, it's flush on this side. But on this side, because I cut it with this, it has a little bit of a point. And I don't know if you can see that or not. But if you want to, you can always trim that little point off. You can use cut burrs if you need that, which is basically a cup-shaped burr that you twist around and it smooths off the end of the wire. You can file it, you can sand it, or you can tuck it in so it won't cut anybody. So there's a lot of options for that. What time is it? Cynthia says, can you show a beaded messy wire wrap? Of course. So I'm gonna Alexa, what time is it?
It's 5:51 p.m.
So I got a couple minutes. I can show y'all. So I'm gonna cut off about this is about 12 inches of wire. Alexa is still talking to me, even though we were done asking the question. That's okay. She is a good listener. And I've got some beads here. And I'm going to show you again. So I'm going to do this kind of quick so that you can kind of see. Now, these are not, some of these briolettes, the holes, go down pretty far. So just keep that in mind. Oh, people are saying that their Alexas are hearing what I'm saying. Well, that's nice that they're always listening. All right, so I'm just wrapping this around, wrapping. And I'm doing this very loosely, very organically, but it's going to want to fit into that kind of shape, and that's fine. And then when I get to the end, I'm going to tuck this in. And if I have to trim it, I can trim it. Alexa, stop the timer. All right, so that's in there. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a wire wrap loop, just like we did earlier. And then before I go too crazy and wire that all the way down, I'm going to get some beads and string up some beads on the end of my wire. Like so. And these are just, it's just a luxury bead blend mix that I had laying around. And I'm going to slide those in. And as I'm wrapping, I'm going to kind of drop those beads in place. You see? So that spaces them out. All right. And then if I run out of beads, I can add more. And that will add more texture to the wire wraps. All right. And here I'm going to be a little bit where I'm going to kind of just go more organic and free flow and not make it super even. So I'm going to cross the wires. Normally I try not to cross my wires. I want them to lay kind of flush. But now I'm going to want to go and do that. Now I'm getting close to the tip, so I'm going to get my pliers out, and then I'm just going to kind of embed this into that kind of bird's nest of wire. All right. So I'll straighten this out and kind of, you're going to actually push kind of the wire together. And so there's this, and you can leave it like this where it's kind of messy wrapped at the top here like this, or you can put squiggles in. And so I'm going to show you right now how this is right now. And if you want to tighten up this wire, you get your round nose pliers, and you'll get the round nose pliers that are rosary pliers that have a finer tip, and then you'll insert them into that messy wrap like so and twist it. And in theory, it's going to create a swiggle. And it did swiggle, but it swiggled the other one loose. All right, I'm going to push that back down. Because it's so loose, you kind of have to hold it in place while you're doing this. And what that does is it creates kind of those little zigzags in the wire, like ocean waves. And you can use that squiggle to lock beads in place too. So if you need to have have them sit in one particular place and not move around. That's one way that you can lock them in place. Now I'm going to use this tip to put that in there and make sure that it is embedded into that kind of wire wrap messy nest. You know, it's like a messy bun. So basically we're fabricating our flyaways. All right, so, and you can keep going and add more of those squiggles if you want. Now the danger is that you can bend your wire and it can snap. So you kind of have to be careful with how much you do that because you're work hardening the wire. And also it can, if you change the shape on one side, it can change the shape on the other side. So just keep that in mind when you're doing that so that you don't have a lot of you know, so it doesn't fall apart completely. But so that way you've got a little fun little beaded wrapped nest there. So you've got 3 styles of wire wrapping briolettes. You have this one that has a little swirl on the top. Now, depending on how much wire, you can go further down or further up. However, you want to have enough that it locks this in place. You can do it where it's kind of just sticking out at the top. And you could do that. And you can also do it where it's kind of a messy wire wrap with beads. All right. So different ideas for your wire wrapping of briolettes. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to, I see a couple folks, saying to some comments, but I'm going to flip this around and then we'll say bye-bye. Howdy, it's me again. In case you don't know, it's me. So today in our Tuesday tutorial, live at 5, we did 3 different styles of wire wrapping briolettes. I'm going to adjust this so it's coming a little bit down, you know, contouring with the angle of the camera and less up to round, you know, lessen the rounding of my face. Anyway, so here we made this. Then we made this. I'm kind of like trying to figure out where everything is. And then Cynthia was like, "You don't have time," but we did have time. We made this little messy bird nest wrap. All right. Hopefully you all enjoyed that. Have fun, and I would recommend playing around. Do it a couple times, and don't put any expectations on you and your making. Because the reason why I say that you should just play around first with a wire and see how it goes is that sometimes when you're learning a new thing, particularly wire wrapping, I've noticed people get kind of, they cinch up, clench up, and they get a little bit, you know, where they get a little bit anxious about it. And so hopefully, you know, by playing with the wire and kind of letting the wire lead you to how it works, you know, maybe you waste a little bit of wire, but you know, $1's worth of wire, and you can have a better understanding of the material and how it moves. So I definitely recommend just cutting off some wire and playing around with it and seeing how it goes. And just keep in mind, you know, some of the things that we talked about picking the right wire for your project, and then have fun. So thanks so much for tuning in today. Hopefully you have a great rest of your week. We'll be back tomorrow evening. William will be. I don't have the foggiest notion of what he will be doing. I think he wants to highlight some of the stuff that's in the online store that may have gotten glossed over, because sometimes we add a lot of stuff and then people don't see it, because we have these live at fives every day, every weekday. And so we add new stuff or try to add new stuff every day. So sometimes things get buried and sometimes things get lost amongst the loveliness of the online shop. So if I think his plan is to highlight some of the things that people may have not seen. And yeah, so hopefully people will enjoy that. We had a great time at Snag. I had a great time teaching at Contemporary Craft. They asked me to teach again. I think I'm going to pitch a class on making little reliquaries, maybe a reliquary pendant. That way we can play with the rolling mill and add texture to things and do some riveting and maybe some resin. Either that or I'm going to pitch a fast cast resin class because that's super satisfying. Like by the end of it, you like walk away and you have like this massive yield of stuff and you're like, whoa, I made all that stuff. Now, what do I do with it? And I think I might make it into a magnet project so that they just glue a magnet on the back and then, touch it up and then call it a day. So we'll see. Now, if you have any requests for videos for the future that you'd like to see, just leave them in the comments. Let us know what you're interested in learning more about or going more in depth about. And generally, we can do it. Sometimes things, depending on if it's my technique or somebody else's technique, it gets a little bit less than good to do other people's stuff. So I try to steer clear of that. But if it's a basic skill, then I'm happy to help. Or if it's something that I've kind of done, then, within reason, I can show you. So leave those in the comments and let us know what you're interested in. And also, if there are any particular products that you want to see in the online store that are not currently offered there, let us know. And you never know, I have this whole bead room full of goodies. And yeah. All right. So have a great night, everybody. Stay safe out there and stay creative. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.